What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another movie review. This time we are talking about another Wes Craven film, an extremely influential slasher once again, and that is, of course, Scream. Alright, hope you guys are doing well. I was on vacation for about a week and I haven't made a video in a while, so I'm sorry about that. But we are back. We are going to go through the Scream series leading up to Scream 6, coming out in about 6 days from now. So I gotta rush through these movies, but we are going to take our time on these reviews. It's going to be a fun series to go through. Going to rank all the movies at the end, so please stay tuned for that. And for all things horror, come to this channel right here. I got a few reviews up and more coming out very soon. So if you guys are excited for any of that, please stay tuned, but for right now, let's talk about Scream. Alright, so you guys do not need me to tell you how much of a cultural impact this film had on the state of horror around the mid-90s when it came out. I was born in 2004, so I was not here for the release of it. I actually saw this film pretty late in life. I was about 10 or 11 when I saw this for the first time, and I had already been exposed to all the major slashers. I had seen Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th, and a couple of the sequels in those, so Scream was something I always grew up hearing about but didn't actually see until a little bit later. I actually, come to think of it, I saw Scary Movie before I saw Scream. But yeah, this film made a huge impact on the horror genre as a whole. Slashers more specifically, but all of horror, right? You had tons and tons of people going as Ghostface, and since the franchise continued, I remember seeing people dressing up as Ghostface for Halloween, even in 2007, I think was the first time that I remember seeing it, and I had seen spoofs and parodies and tributes to the opening scene of this film, which we are going to talk about in just a second. But yeah, I grew up knowing everything about this film, but didn't actually see it until a little bit later. And of course, it has to be said, this is one of the greatest slasher films ever made, like no question about it. It's not my all-time favorite, but it is definitely top 10, maybe even top 5 material for me. I really enjoy this movie every time I go back to it. So let's get into the specifics of why I think Scream is so fucking awesome. So first, I want to talk about the opening scene, because that is possibly the biggest and most memorable part of this film, even though the whole film all the way through is great. You have Drew Barrymore in this house by herself. She gets the mysterious phone call where you have the horror movie trivia. The killer is talking to her, asking her questions about horror films. And as far as I know, like I said, I wasn't there to see it personally, but Drew Barrymore was a large part of the marketing for this film, so you would expect her to be a very integral and main character to this film, but she's only in this first 10 minutes of the film, this opening scene. You have the iconic exchange where the killer's asking her questions, she's answering everything about horror films, and this is where you get the first hint of the kind of meta storytelling and tone that this film takes on throughout its whole runtime. Unlike a lot of other slasher films, this takes place in a time where those other slashers, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, they all came out in this world. This is our real world. Nothing supernatural going on here. And that's what I think makes this film a little bit more grounded and in realism. I mean, obviously, but I just think it's cool to have that kind of relatable note. But yeah, you have that whole chase sequence with Drew Barrymore, and this is the first time you see Ghostface in the costume, and man, this is such an iconic look. I mean, like I said, the whole splash this made, everybody was dressing up as Ghostface, and it's such a simple costume, just this weird distorted ghost mask with black robes and black boots, and you know, his only weapon is really this small knife, but it's so effective because it's minimal, you know? I can totally see why this made the impact that it did. I would also say the opening to this film is one of the scariest moments in this film. I mean, it really builds tension. It goes for a couple of jump scares that are not cheap at all. They are definitely earned, and they are legitimately good scares. And it's also pretty damn gory. I mean, you have the boyfriend who's tied up, and you eventually see all his intestines and stuff spilled out, and then you get Drew Barrymore, who is killed off. I just got a message. But yeah, you get Drew Barrymore, who is killed off in this opening, and she's, you know, hanging from a tree. Her parents come and find her. It's gory and it's brutal, and that's one of the reasons why I love this film. Getting into the main characters of this film, I love all of these people, man. It's such a fun cast. I mean, you have our main character, Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, who is immediately shown as kind of the everyday, you know, average girl, but we find out she has more backstory to her. She lives with her dad, and her mother was murdered, and you have the supposed killer, Cotton Weary, in prison, and you have, through that, you get introduced to Gale Weathers, who's a news reporter who is trying to, you know, clear Cotton Weary's name because she doesn't believe that he killed her. It's really well written and extremely interesting to kind of put the pieces together the more you find out throughout this film. You have all her friends and her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, who is played really, really well by Skeet Ulrich. You have Shaggy himself in this film, Stu. He's an extremely funny character, and he's kind of off throughout the whole film. He's kind of weird, but you enjoy that because Matthew Lillard, who plays Stu, really leans into that side of it and that kind of comedy side. You also have Randy, who is kind of a voice for the audience. Like I said, this film takes on a very meta storyline and kind of pokes fun at all the tropes of slashers while also subverting those tropes and doing something a little bit different with them, which I really like. And Randy kind of plays into all of that because he is speaking for the audience. He is telling people all the slasher rules, you know, what you can and can't do in a horror movie, what'll get you killed, what'll keep you safe. And these are tropes that have been building since like the late 70s, early 80s, when slashers in particular first started to get really big. And on top of that, you have Dewey, who is this kind of bumbling cop who also adds to the comedy of this film. His character is also a little off in that he's kind of a little bit of a man-child in this first film. I think his character does nothing but improve over the course of this film franchise. Even though I love him in the first film, I mean, David Arquette is an awesome actor, and it's cool to see him all the way up to Scream 5. Another aspect I really like about this film franchise as a whole is the whole whodunit aspect of the Scream franchise. I mean, you never have the same Ghostface. Ghostface, it's himself or herself, is kind of an image that people take on and a mantle people take up, if that makes any sense. Like, it's always the same costume, but it's always somebody different in each film. And I love the clues and the ride that they take you on as to putting the pieces together to find out who Ghostface is, or if there's multiple Ghostfaces. But I want to go back for a second and talk a little bit more about our main protagonist, Sidney Prescott, and particularly where she lands on the spectrum of final girls. And I think she is in serious competition for being maybe the greatest final girl of all time. Admittedly, she's not going up against a supernatural force like Freddy or, depending on where you stop in the franchise, Jason, but she is so badass because she does not take any shit from these killers. I mean, you kind of get her evolution throughout the film where she's kind of getting beat down by Ghostface the first couple times she encounters him, But by the end, in the third act, you have this house full of people partying, and Ghostface shows up and everybody leaves to go check out the fucking dead principal, Fonzie. But when you get all these main characters that are getting taken out one by one, you see Sidney really rise to the occasion and start fighting back. But now we are going to talk about the ending of Scream, so if you haven't seen this movie, some wild chance, go watch it, skip this part. You deserve to see it unaltered if you don't know the spoilers already, but here we go. Of course, you get the amazing reveal of Billy and Stu being the two killers. They have been dressing up as Ghostfaces and attacking people at different points in the movie, and you get their whole villain monologue that I think is just written so well. I mean, you had, during the production of this film, a panel of people deciding whether these killers should have a motive or be completely motiveless, and this ending gives you the best of both worlds regarding those. You have Billy Loomis, who is, once again, Sidney's boyfriend, and he has this whole backstory. He was the one that killed Sidney's mom because she was having an affair with Billy's dad, which caused Billy's mom to leave, so he has these kind of deep-seated abandonment issues from that, and I just think that's a really, really nice way to tie all those storylines together. Then on the opposite side of that, you have Stu, who is, like I said, very off the whole movie, and you kind of find out he's just kind of along for the ride, you know? Just wants to kill people and is pretty much motiveless. And one of my favorite things about this scene is the back and forth kind of banter between Billy and Stu. I mean, there is so much funny shit going on here, so much comedy, and it's very, very interesting to have that kind of contrasting tone with some of the dark stuff that this film goes for. I mean, it's very dark and brutal at times, but you always have that more lighthearted and in some cases black comedy to contrast the really dark stuff, which I think makes this film pretty much endlessly rewatchable. I mean, I've seen this film countless times and enjoy myself possibly even more each time I watch it. It's a absolute classic and such a great film in the slasher history. Kevin Wlliamson, the screenwriter of this film, did such a good job putting all of this stuff together, and I'm really glad that he had a director like Wes Craven to kind of bring his vision to life and bring this really, really smart and different, unique idea for a slasher to the masses and make the impact that it did. I understand he wrote this film kind of for himself, as something he really wanted to see when slashers and some horror movies were getting a little bit more stale in the early 90s, and I think he did it, man. I mean, this is a classic. This is an absolute classic. Now, the only slight negative that I might have with this film is not the kills as a whole, because I think this is very much a throwback and kind of rewind to classic slashers, so every kill in this film is a stab, which I'm totally fine with. I mean, I think, you know, it's the most classic way to dispatch of any slasher character, so I'm totally cool with it being only stabs and making that as gory as possible. But the one kill that is not a stab, the garage door kill, is, in my opinion, pretty fucking stupid. I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's just not the greatest kill in the world. I mean, I highly doubt that garage would lift her up, and even if it did, I don't think her neck would be crushed like that. But every time I watch it, I'm just like, all right, move past it. Rest of the movie, 100% perfect in my opinion. Nothing else I can say. So yeah, obviously, this is a classic film. I would give Scream 96 an A+, of course. Alright, well that is my review for Scream. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I hope you guys enjoy this film as much as I do. And if you're excited for Scream 6, stay tuned because we are going to be covering that the day it comes out. I'm very excited to see what they have to offer next. So, again, if you guys enjoyed, please like, please subscribe, stay tuned for all the cool content that I have coming up, and I will see you in the next video.